Hey everyone, hope everything's going well for you. It's Sunday morning, the week before Las Vegas. I thought we'd do a question and answer video. I'm not near the car. I'll take a lot of footage with some questions and stuff this weekend at the 4 wide. But recently, and I thank everybody. I got a lot of traffic through my channel, and I got a lot of new subscribers with a lot of new questions, which helps me out a lot to do these things. So being as I'm not at the car, we'll answer a bunch of questions that we got that I don't really need the car to show. So I wrote them down, so forgive me when I look up and down from the camera, but I got to read them, and that also means I got to put on my readers. But anyways, let's just get started. Joe Lesko asked if do we start the engine on full nitro, or do we start it and do burnouts on something else? When we actually first start it, it's actually on 87 octane gasoline. That's the squirt bottle that you see that goes into the injector hat, and then it immediately goes on full nitro. We do the burnout in nitro. Everything's just on full nitro. We don't have two systems or anything like that. An A fuel car, which is an injected nitro without a blower, those start on alcohol. They have a little tank. They'll start on alcohol, and once they're running, they'll roll them over onto nitro. They have a lot more static compression than we do, and they can't start them directly on nitro. John MC asked, do the spark plugs melt after each run? Kind of. So I got a spark plug here, and as you can see, this is the ground strap. Now on the ground strap, we run two 44 amp mags, one for each spark plug, 2 spark plugs per cylinder, and we run a lot of dwell. You need a lot of flame front to make nitro burn. It makes a lot of power, but it's slow and it's hard to stay lit. And what happens is, being we run so much dwell, that spark plug gap that you set, we burn it way back. So the ground strap doesn't melt, it just gets burnt back. A 44 amp mag, and the voltage that runs through those steps up, I can't remember, like 120,000 volts or something like that. It just acts like a welding arc, and it just starts to burn that back. The other thing is this porcelain down in there, from the heat and the intense pressure and everything in the cylinder, sometimes that'll chip out and blow apart. But generally, all that's happening is we're burning the spark plug electrode so far back it can't be used again after one pass. Another question, why rebuild between each round instead of swap motors? It's kind of a good question. It takes us about the same amount of time to swap as it does to rebuild. You just don't have that many full motors in the trailer to swap between every round. And like I say, most basic components are getting swapped out. All the heads are getting swapped out and all of that anyways. But we do planned. A lot of times we do planned engine swaps. So like if you're going rounds on Sunday, we'll have a planned motor swap between the second and third round, because to take heat out, just to be safe, there's lots of different ways to go about doing it. Junior May asked, would titanium blocks ever be a possibility in the future? I highly doubt it, because there's really no benefit to it. Titanium is strong and lightweight, and you use it in parts and components for that ability. The way that a block's designed already out of billet aluminum with iron sleeves, there's not enough advantage for the weight, or enough advantage for a lot of things to make that something that you'd want to spend that kind of money on, because that would be insanely expensive. I know there's back in the day they experimented with titanium rods. I think there's still some around, not in nitro but in other applications. I know in Pro Stock at one time I think somebody had actually built a titanium crankshaft. Rotating mass it would be a lot better for, but even that became cost prohibitive and didn't really net the gain that you would want to see from it. Captain McFinigal, what are the blocks worth? Blocks that we run are Alan Johnson blocks, and they are right around, well, by the time you get all the fidgets on them, you're looking at close to 10 grand, 9 to 10 grand. You can pick them up used, 6-7 grand if they're not hurt, a little less if they need some work. Lua asked, how many engine parts are shared between teams? Kind of depends. A lot of our stuff is interchangeable. A lot of us use the same crankshaft. Camshafts are kept pretty tight to the vest. We all kind of have our own custom grind camshaft. A lot of piston heights are shared the same, little differences. Rings are pretty much the same. We're all running the same bore for the most part, 4187. So lots of parts can be interchanged. We use a lot of blocks. We buy a lot of parts from other teams. We sell some parts to other teams, just depending on where we're at. So a lot of that stuff is interchangeable, and a lot of guys help each other out when they can. David Reed asked, overlap too much could cause the valves to hit each other. Yeah, you're never going to grind a cam to have so much overlap that the valves are going to come in contact with each other. But you could, I mean, if you just push them down, even though they're coming at opposing angles on a Hemi. And when I'm in Las Vegas, I'll take a head and show you on the valve of how far they're out before they hit. I think he asked that too, so we'll get that in Vegas. David Reed also asked, as deck height changes due to fixing, repairs, crank, the main line, moving the main line and up stuff, how do we compensate for that? We compensate for that with head gaskets. A lot of our motors do not have the same deck height, and we have an array of head gaskets from 65 thousandths up to like 120 thousandths, and we can just make the adjustment in the head gasket on whatever Mike feels is what he needs for compression ratio. Jay Walker, tune-up race day versus qualifying setup. This weekend I'll ask Mike a little bit more about that, but for the most part, there's not a huge difference in the tune-ups. We're trying to get the car to go down the racetrack. The tune-up between race day and qualifying, you still need to make a good pass in qualifying. You got to make the field if there's more than 16 cars, but a large part of what we're doing is we're racing the racetrack, not necessarily who's in the other lane. You got to get the car as fast and as quickly as you can down the given surface and the conditions that we're given on any given weekend. You might tune it up a little bit different based on who's in the other lane. If they're running really fast, you might go a little harder than you think you can go, or if they're not going very fast, you might try to keep it a little bit safer. But that's all decisions in Mike's head, and I don't ask him a whole lot about that on race day because it's serious out there. But anyways, Keith Lewis asked about stress or relieving the blocks after welding. I think he was referring to the block stress relief. I don't weld the blocks myself. We send those out. Usually the whole block gets heated. To do a good repair on big aluminum, you need to heat the whole block and weld it and allow that to cool back down. And I know that there's some guys that'll heat them again after that and try to relieve stress throughout the block so it doesn't twist. And again, I can't thank you all enough for all the questions and all of that. I love answering them, and we've got, if your question's not being answered here, it's probably going to get answered at the track, because I want to show stuff with the car and create a lot more content, which I've been lax on lately because I'm not near the car, and race season's been a little slow to get started, but it's gonna hit full steam here in just a couple weeks. Keith Lewis asked about the why not bring the front wheels past the front wing to help steer the car. We don't have any trouble steering the car, but we need clean air to hit that front wing to keep the downforce. Downforce up there is way more important than steerability, but the downforce gives you the steerability because it's putting a lot of pressure on those front tires to turn the car wherever you need to. But we create 1,500 pounds or better of downforce with that front wing, and it's needed there to keep it from blowing over. MB Tabor asked, how is the fuel injection controlled? Because he didn't see any electric lines. It's mechanical fuel injection. It's controlled with the barrel valve, which you return more or less fuel back to the tank or back to the pump. And it's all mechanical fuel injection, which has been around since the 40s, I think, probably before that. But in racing, it's been out since the 50s and 60s. And it's not, there's more, can be somewhat more technical and stuff today, but a lot of it's based on those same principles that they've had forever. Andy Jones asked, why no pistons and rods when I put the short block together and I put the oil pan on? We do not put pistons and rods into the motor until race day. I put the short blocks together, do all the cam timing and all of that, but we do not put the pistons and rods in until race day when we're putting the engine together to run it. There's a couple reasons for that, travel, but mainly is with the heat treat on the rods. they can't be torqued anyways. We don't leave rods on top fuel car torqued overnight. If we put the motor together and don't make a run, I'm going to drain the oil out, pull the oil pan off, and untorque the rods and retorque them the next morning. And so it's just easier just to throw the rack in once she's there. Plus it makes it a little light, means we lift those things in and out of the trailer by hand. Nick, I believe it's Nick K, asked, how many times will you resurface a clutch disc and a floater typically? I'll talk to Kaylin a little bit about this at the track, and we'll do some footage of her department a little bit, but mainly the clutch discs itself get resurfaced once, maybe twice if it didn't wear much. They wear enough that they're out of spec within 2 passes. So usually the clutch pack has got, you know, new and used, but the used are usually only used for 1 pass. And the floaters, we don't reuse floaters at all. Floaters get pitched out after every pass, which I know sounds wasteful, but it's drag racing. It might be a little wasteful. Nick K also asked the firing order. It's standard Hemi firing order. Bob Shelby, are engines the same in funny cars as into our dragsters? Basically, their injector hat's different because of the height that they have to deal with. They also run a different oil pan and kind of a dry sump system for clearance issues. But as far as the internals are concerned, they're real similar. We can interchange parts, same blocks, stuff like that. Aim Nelson asked how much boost. All of it. No. We're limited by NHRA on how much boost we can actually run, and I think that limit's 60 pounds. So you would bet that we're probably in the 50s most of the time, and we change that depending on compression and all the conditions that Mike takes into play on his computer. He boils all that down and makes the call on how much overdrive we run to run how much blower versus how much compression he's running and everything else. And he's the guy that makes those calls with a whole bunch of information that he's trying to decipher to make that call. Tony Johnson asked about a rear main seal and how we can it or not. I'm going to show that actually on a block here at work this week, and we'll make another video for that. We don't cant them to the angle in the top fuel car, because if I have to change it in between rounds, we don't even glue them into place. I put a couple touches of silicone on the one on the main cap so it doesn't fall out when I'm pulling the main cap out after every round. But the one up in the block, I don't even glue it. That way I can just shove it out and shove a new one in if something was to happen to it. They do a really good job of not leaking, and we run diapers and everything, so if they seep just a tiny bit, we wouldn't care. Not like a race engine and we put in something else. So the engines I build at my job, we're going to make sure that those don't leak, and there's a way we do it just like what you were describing, but we'll show that for everybody. Key saying, blowers and a blower dyno, if we ever put our blowers on a blower dyno and how many runs we get out of one. We can get a ton of time out of a blower if it doesn't get hurt, you know, a backfire or a big blow up. We do tear them down and restrip them every few passes, and it really just depends on how it's wearing and which blower. So some passes only get, you know, a couple passes and they need to be restripped. Some blowers will go 4 or 5 passes before they need to be restripped. We don't run a blower, we don't own a blower dyno. We've used one a few times to see where they're at originally when we get them. Colettas have been kind enough to let us use theirs. We bought some blowers from them and dynoed some of ours and their blowers. We don't do that a ton. The computer, the race pack will tell us how the blower is doing after each run. We know how much boost it's making for given a certain pulley combo, and we just kind of go from there. So I don't know, that's the question and answer session for this one. Like I say, we're going to be live and in action in Las Vegas here in a week, and I'll get a lot of content there hopefully and keep coming back at you. But I can't thank everybody enough for all the views I've gotten here lately and all the subscribers and stuff. So hopefully we can keep answering your questions and showing you some cool stuff when I'm back with the car at the track. Anyways, have a good week everybody, and we'll see you this weekend in Vegas.